Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. A little bit later in the show, we will talk Cavs with Sam Amico. We begin with Browns news. Dan Orlovsky, ESPN, talking about how he thinks Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, can be most effectively used in the NFL and who Hunter reminds him of.
I want to be respectful here. I think he can do whatever he wants. When I watch the tape and when I watch the guy play, I'm like, there's some clips, and I say this with all reverence. He looks like the guy that played in Minnesota for a long time years ago. That's sometimes when he gets the ball in his hands, Travis Hunter looks like Randy Moss with the ball in his hands. Sometimes he looks like Tyreek Hill. So as great of a corner as he is, and I'm sure he's going to play both at some points in his NFL career, his wide receiver skill and talent, it would be an easy decision for me. Dude, you're playing wide out.
I want it all. I want it both. I want Darrelle Revis on defense, and I want a point scorer on offense, and that's why I lean corner early, but I still get 15, 20 consequential plays.
Let me make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. You're saying you couldn't play receiver and a little corner as easily as you could play corner and a little receiver based on the schemes and all that kind of thing.
But if we have a package, Greeny, and say, hey, just know these 15 plays, you can do that with like an extra walkthrough and carve time out for that.
Again, talking about Travis Hunter, who will be in the mix at 2 potentially for the Browns. Todd McShay, draft analyst for The Ringer, used to work for ESPN, on what he heard from a couple of teams that had interviews at the Combine with Shedeur Sanders.
The 2 people that I spoke to were in meetings and had these individual meetings that I just laid out to you, what they are, who's in there, and why they're important. Teams in the top 10 drafting that need a quarterback. The 2 people that I spoke to in these positions left the meeting feeling like Shedeur Sanders was not overly concerned with what they thought of him. They had a 15-minute meeting with them, and when they were done, they both said in different ways, different words, that they did not feel like Shedeur Sanders cared all that much about what that organization thought of him. Fascinating, right? It wasn't a professional approach. Shedeur Sanders did not take a professional approach to this interview. The other person I talked to said he wasn't taking it seriously at all.
Again, this time of year, a lot of that gets overblown. So you listen to it, you don't get too caught up in it. Especially when you're looking at draft prospects, those meetings, a lot of that gets overblown. All right, Tony Rizzo on his thoughts with the quarterback situation at number 2 overall for the Browns.
I would take Ward or Sanders. I'm taking a swing there at number 2. I'm not messing around. We don't know what the Browns think. I'd love to have Andrew sit right there and tell me, who do you like better, Cam or Shedeur, and by how much? Because if you really like Cam Ward that much more than Shedeur Sanders, you got to trade up and get him. And I don't want to hear it's a third. I checked around last night. It'll be a third to move up 1 spot because the team you're trading with is still going to get their guy that they want at number 2.
And that is a fair assessment, but a third from the Browns' perspective, if it's top of the third, is more like a second. And so the question becomes, okay, you trade that third, and there's a really good running back that you didn't think was going to be there at the top of the 3rd round. So those are all the things you got to weigh. But at face value, if the Browns really like Cam Ward and it only costs a third, yeah, they need to trade up and get him. Today was transition and franchise tag day, so some guys being let go, and the Jets released Davante Adams. That will save him $29.9, almost $30 million against the cap by releasing him. Had no guaranteed money left on his deal, so Davante Adams released by the Jets. Bengals are trying to trade defensive lineman Sam Hubbard. They could cut him if the trade doesn't materialize. That would save them $9.5 million in cap space if they are able to unload that. And again, they're trying to clear up money. They franchise tagged T. Higgins yesterday. They need to find a way to pay Jamar Chase, who wants $40 million plus, and they also need to find a way to pay Trey Hendrickson, their defensive lineman. Seattle Seahawks have released a couple of guys in what will save them over $26 million against the cap. Tight end George Fant, Rashawn Jenkins, Draymond Jones from Ohio State, St. Ignatius, and Roy Robertson Harris all let go in a cap move that will save them over $26 million. Remember, Browns were one of the last guys in on Draymond Jones when the Seahawks signed him as a free agent. Seahawks paid a little bit more than the Browns. Andrew Berry held firm. So Jones, a guy to keep your ears out for and see if he ends up back in Cleveland this free agency period, which is getting ready to start in about 6 days. All right, Donovan Mitchell continues to play well and continues to earn plenty of accolades. He is the Eastern Conference Player of the Month for February, almost 26 points per game, over 4 rebounds, over 5 assists. Mitchell earns the Eastern Conference Player of the Month. LeBron James, as you saw, the Western Conference Player of the Month. Cavs will play the Bulls tonight. ESPN National NBA analyst Brian Windhorst with his assessment of the top teams in the Eastern Conference.
My assessment of where the East is that Boston remains the favorite, but it is tight. As good as they are, they routinely lose focus, and they have trouble with Donovan Mitchell. These are 2 things I can say for sure happens. And so I don't think we learned anything, but I think the Cavs definitely walked away with that, believing that if they had to have it, they could get a win in Boston.
And again, referring to the game a couple games ago, Cavs fell behind 25-3, came back and won the game. Now, Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday did not play for the Celtics, so that's just keep that in mind. All right, Kyrie Irving done for the year. Actually tore his ACL in his left knee last night, early in the game. Ended up coming back shooting 2 free throws, but tore an ACL, ending Kyrie Irving's season for the Dallas Mavericks. Guardians prospect Chase DeLauder just cannot stay healthy. Had surgery to repair a sports hernia. Will miss 8 to 12 weeks. 3rd year that he's had injuries. Injuries have limited him to just 96 games since Cleveland selected him in the first round of the 2022 draft. An intriguing prospect who just cannot stay on the field. DeLauder, again, out 8 to 12 weeks with sports hernia after he had surgery. Luis Ortiz, who the Guardians are expecting to be 2nd or 3rd in their starting rotation this year, had a rough outing his first time out this spring. Much better yesterday out in Arizona in his 2nd outing. Went 3 innings, allowed 1 earned run, and struck out 2, including that challenge with the new ABS, automatic ball strike system. Yeah, he got the corner there. That does not lie. Again, it's still early, nothing to worry about. Had a couple of strikeouts, 3 innings, so good news that Ortiz is rounding into shape. Jonathan Rodriguez, a young guy trying to earn a spot in the outfield where DeLauder was injured. 3 of 10 in the early going, hit this one the opposite way to right center. His first home run of the spring. And again, Jonathan Rodriguez, 300 this spring, trying to earn a spot in that outfield as the Guardians trying to figure out that offense, especially in the outfield. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead, we're talking Browns. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
With the new Monopoly Bonus Spectacular family of scratch-offs from the Ohio Lottery, you can uncover a spectacular amount of winnings. With 5 games from $1 to 20, multipliers from 5 times to 100 times, over $113 million in total cash prizes and chance bonuses. What you find under a greenhouse could change everything.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue on Sports4CLE, and we start off by talking Browns. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, you wrote an article that Browns free agents, Nick Chubb, Jedrick Wills, Elijah Moore, Jameis Winston, could all have new homes as free agency starts. What do you think the future holds for Nick Chubb? This has been one that has caused a lot of buzz for Browns fans.
It really has, and I do find it sad. I can relate to how Browns fans feel. I've really enjoyed covering Nick. I hate to see him go. I would love to have him finish his career here, but as we all know, it's a business. The Browns are probably going to move on and let him try to find another opportunity where he can go out and get more playing time than he would have gotten here. So hopefully in the end, it works out really well for him, and maybe they will either draft a running back, maybe they will sign a running back, trade for one, or some combination of the above. And I just think that it really does seem to be the end of the road for Nick here.
The other one that has been a disappointing Browns tenure has been Jedrick Wills. That's a guy that, Andrew Berry gets beat up a lot because the 10th overall pick, and it just didn't work out here.
Yeah, it's really, really unfortunate when you look at that whole thing, because that was the number one, the first round pick for this regime. And it was a pretty darn high pick, number 10 overall. And for Jed not to work out and get to that second contract, you have to consider that to be a fail, right? Now, a lot of it has to do with the fact that he was injured for many of his possible starts. He just wasn't able to be on the field, including he only started 13 out of the last 34 possible games. So that's just not going to cut it. And now he's going to be out there trying to find a new home. There is a world in which he can come back here potentially as a backup swing tackle, but as of now, he will be out there trying to find a better opportunity for himself.
All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hey guys, I'm sitting here thinking the Eagles are constantly being brought up in trade talks for Myles Garrett if it ever happens. But what I'm thinking is if the Browns can't get the draft picks that they want before the draft, I think they could sort of supplement it with players. If I'm the Browns and I'm talking to the Eagles, I'm not entertaining any trade talks unless it involves either Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, or maybe throw in Cooper DeJean on top of one of them. The Browns should not have to be reasonable when it comes to trading a Hall of Fame player. The Browns should get back the best return possible. Just my thoughts. Hopefully we have a good draft, but go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, I agree. They shouldn't be reasonable. The intriguing thing, the Eagles do have a lot of young defensive linemen that are talented, and that I didn't even think of that. The draft doesn't excite me with them because those picks are like second-round picks when you're picking in the 30s.
That's for sure. So, yes, absolutely. And the other thing to consider is the Eagles are not going to give up a bunch of their good young talent. They're so good at drafting, and they're not going to give up a bunch of young guys that they have coming up to fill in some of those spots and to be those defenders of the future for a player who is on the back nine of his career. He's going to be 30 on December 29th. And of course, anybody would still love to have him. He's playing at an incredibly high level. But you're not going to give up a 24-year-old, a 23-year-old that can be with you for the next decade in exchange for Myles Garrett right now. So I don't think that there are going to be very many teams that would have what the Browns would accept in a trade and would also have the amount of money that it would take to sign Myles Garrett to the extension that he's going to want. I think the pool of teams is very small at this point.
So I know you've answered these two in your Hey Mary case. I'm curious. Why didn't Myles Garrett buy what the Browns were selling about the winning season? And also, is it true that his camp really aren't open to a contract extension? How do you think it ends? Those are two hard questions, I know.
Yes. Well, why didn't he buy what the Browns were selling in terms of winning in 2025? I find it somewhat puzzling. I've talked to a number of other players since the season ended, since they've had their season-ending meetings. I've talked to Denzel Ward. I've talked to Greg Newsome. I've talked to Joel Bitonio. These are some pretty high-level players, and they feel that the Browns are a good quarterback away from winning. I don't know why Myles Garrett did not feel that way, because if you have him, and you have Denzel, and you have Joel Bitonio if he doesn't retire, and you have some of these guys, and you do get that quarterback, and then you add a few other pieces, like another receiver, like a running back, then I don't know why Myles thinks that you can't get to winning by next season. I don't understand that. If it's not about the money, I have a hard time really understanding why he doesn't agree with some of his teammates that if they plug in a really good quarterback the way that the Commanders did, that they can't get back on the winning track. So in the end, will it ultimately be about the money coupled with a decent quarterback and an influx of talent? It seems that's probably the way that it's headed, but we're just going to have to see how this goes.
And relative to the contract extension, we heard that at the Combine. I think the answer was he's not interested.
Yes, that they are not open to, and I wrote that story, that they are not open to a contract extension. And of course, that's how they feel right now. But sometimes things change. When you find out perhaps that maybe the extension that you wanted isn't out there the way that you want it to be by another team who might try to trade for you, or maybe the other team that you want to go to doesn't have the draft capital to actually make that trade, you might change your mind a little bit. Now, maybe we're wrong about this. Maybe there are 10 teams out there that have that combination of hefty draft capital and up to almost $40 million a year to pay Myles Garrett and make him the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. But if a team doesn't have those things, and there aren't numerous teams that have those things, you just might not find the deal that you're looking for. And so in that scenario, I think you do come back to the Cleveland Browns and you play darn good football the way that you always have.
So relative to what you're talking about, these are the teams that have are most often tied to and have inquired about the Browns. Lions, Eagles, Commanders, Bills, Packers. Well, all of those teams have draft capital that you're not really interested in if you're Andrew Berry.
Right. I mean, what good is it going to do the Cleveland Browns to acquire some late round picks? What good is that going to do them? They're not going to make that trade. The Browns are not going to do that. And they're not going to bend over backwards to make sure that Myles has a wonderful landing spot. It's not a situation where they need to trade him or they want to trade him. He's asking out when they steadfastly don't want to trade him. So they're not motivated to try to make sure that he gets what he wants and that they don't. Now, ultimately, if it turns out that they acquiesce and decide to go ahead and trade him, which I don't see that happening, but if they did do that, it would be because they found something really good and beneficial for themselves that would help the Cleveland Browns be well positioned for the future. So we'll see how that all goes. But right now, I think it would be difficult. I mean, just take the Lions, for example. They are probably going to have to pay Aiden Hutchinson maybe as much as $40 million a year. Do you think they're going to be able to pay both of those guys that much, plus give up some first-round picks? I don't see it happening with them. And you just look at some of those other teams, and it's the same thing as you move along down the list. So We'll have to see. And maybe it'll come to the point where the Browns say, sure, go out and see what you can find, the same way that the Rams just did with Matthew Stafford. And then he ended up going back to the Rams. But at this point, I don't even see them doing that.
So Browns did tender a couple of their younger players today, and I know you tweeted this out, but Winston Reed, Blake Whiteheart. Reed's a guy Reed's a younger guy, intriguing, played pretty well in special teams and played well late in the year when given the opportunity. Same with Whiteheart. That's a young guy that you could see them developing.
Yes, those are two really good young players, and the Browns are going to need all the linebacker and special teams help they could get, especially because, as we know, we have no idea if JOK is going to be able to play this season. The Browns have made no bones about the fact that that situation is up in the air and it is still fluid, and they just don't know at this point, which is really unfortunate. So to have a young guy sort of come out of nowhere like a Winston Reed and perform the way that he has is really, really good for the Cleveland Browns. And then same thing with Blake Whiteheart. They're going to be looking maybe at a little bit more 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. And so I think that they are going to need some younger guys like that too.
So this one's from the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. You, Dan Lobby, and Ashley Bastock. Why do you think the Browns graded so poorly in the NFLPA survey? I have a thought, but I want to hear what you guys thought at first.
Well, one of the things that I want to find out is how many players actually responded to the survey. I don't know the answer to that question, and I don't know if that information is even available. Is this a team-wide thing? Do they all feel this way, or was this a small sample size, too small to be representative of the whole football team? If it is representative of the whole football team, then I really do think that the Browns have to take a good, long, unflinching look at some of the things that were in the survey. Now, let's take the locker room, for instance. They are working on all of that. They are building out over there in Berea, and it's going to be Jimmy's World before long, and they'll have the best of everything. And they started out with a weight room, which is state of the art and wonderful now. So things do change, and their weight room got like an F last year, and now it's like A something. So they're working on the physical plant. Then when you look at the coach, I think that's one to be concerned about. Once again, if this is a representative sample, if he came out 30th out of 32 coaches, then I think they need to take a look at that. And he needs to take a look at that and sit down with some members of his leadership council and ask them, what do you see as are things that I can do better right now? And I think that he just has to be ready to get whatever answers come and then decide what he wants to do about it. Treatment of families. I think that once again, the Browns should sit down with some of those family members or the leadership council and find out how can the families be treated better. And, I think that there's a lot of change coming for the Cleveland Browns and that they will grade higher in a lot of these areas soon. But there are some things that they can definitely address now.
Yeah, the other thing I would think, having been through seasons where you don't win, everything is worse when you win 3 games. The food doesn't taste as good. It's just the way it is.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. When you're filling out that survey and you've won 3 games, it's really hard to feel good about anything at all. So, yeah, there were not a lot of warm and fuzzy feelings at the end of last season. They held it together, though, I think, as a football team. For the most part, they played hard all the way up until the end, and I think that shows something right there. But just in terms of feeling good about the future and feeling good about anything, it's hard to feel that way when you're about to lose your 14th game.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer. Cleveland.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, talk a little bit about quarterback and the draft and free agency. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Action-packed excitement returns to Rocket Arena. The 2025 Mid-American Conference Basketball Tournament, presented by Credit Union One, returns March 12th through the 15th. Pulses will rise and hearts will race as the men and women of the MAC put it all on the line. Tickets are on sale now at rocketarena.com. MAC Tournament Basketball. Be there!
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. This tweet and some sound has been making its rounds Quarterback coach team drafting in the top 7 referred to Shedeur Sanders as coming off brash and arrogant in his team interviews. Mary Kay, I don't want to downplay this or shove it under the rug. I want a quarterback who's arrogant. I want a quarterback who's brash, as long as he listens to the head coach and his teammates like him. So brash and arrogant for a quarterback doesn't necessarily bother me that much.
No, and remember, this is silly season. This is the time of year where you can't believe anything that you hear. I always say this, and I really do believe this, that a GM would probably lie to his own mother or grandmother at this time of year. This is not the time of year when anybody is being honest with anybody about anything. And teams put things out there to advance their own agendas. So if you want Shedeur to fall, you're going to put stuff like that out there. And you're going to ding him when you can. So these are not things to put any stock into whatsoever. I know the Browns really liked meeting with Shedeur at the East-West Shrine Bowl. I have a hard time believing that anything changed by the time they got to the Combine, not that much later than that. And I think they like his personality. I don't think they look at him necessarily as brash. Remember, he is a Deion Sanders child, and you're going to get primetime. You're going to get legendary. You're going to get that razzle-dazzle and that flash, and I don't think the Browns mind that at all.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that he will make a top 30 visit. That's where they come into the facility later this week, and the Browns will be his first visit. So, again, don't read too much into it other than they want him in the facility and they want to talk to him at length.
Yes, and that's exactly the phase of intel that they're in right now, and that is getting to know these guys as players, getting them into their building, seeing how they fit, seeing how maybe have an opportunity for them to meet a few other existing players, just getting a vibe check from them, a personality check, and just getting to really know how they think, how they will move about your building, how they will handle the spotlight, how they will handle adversity, and all of the things that go along with being a starting quarterback.
So I know you wrote an article. Do you think that the Browns would trade up to number 1 to ensure they could draft Cam Ward or Shedeur? And who do you think's second on their radar there?
You know, I don't think at this point that they would trade up to get Cam, but you can never rule anything out at this point. As I mentioned before, you have to be very, very careful about what you're hearing, what you think you're hearing, what someone is telling you, what they're not telling you, what the rumors on the street and the word on the street is. No one really knows what's going on right now. But if the Browns really do like Cam Ward that much, I would think that they would at least have to consider trading up to number 1 to get him. But I don't think it's likely right now that they would do that. That means to me that perhaps they have Cam and Shedeur ranked closely enough that they would be happy with either one of them. That's the only way that you wouldn't at least think about trading up to number 1 to get Cam.
So you also wrote another article that Cam Ward has the bigger arm, is more athletic, all those things. Those are what we've heard. But you wrote an article, Shedeur outshines Cam in one key area. Take us through that and where you went with that.
Yeah, the key area is that, that star power. He's got that face of the franchise, look at me, quarterback leadership way about him. Now, there are many, many ways to go about leadership, but Shedeur is just a very flashy, showy, again, primetime, legendary face of the franchise guy, whereas Cam is way more subdued than that. But do not sleep on his leadership, because he is a very, very powerful leader as well. And his teammates will be the first to tell you that. It's just that he doesn't show it in the same way. Shedeur showed up at the Combine podium with his sideways cap and his flashy smile and his diamonds around his neck. And Cam just walked up as himself. No jewelry, nothing distinguishing on himself, just walking up there and being himself. And I thought it was refreshing. I enjoyed it, but I also really liked Shedeur. So it's just really a matter of how you think that they will fit in your organization if you like them sort of equally well.
Yeah, you know what? I got the sense both of them were kind of being who they were, which is what you want to see. That's a good thing. One of your Hey Mary Kays, why do you think Will Howard isn't getting the notoriety and the love that might be deserved of a guy who won a national championship?
You know, it's a great question. It really is a great question. He really has flown under the radar a lot, but he has started to pick up steam. I've seen certain things where some people have him as their QB3. Now, he did not participate in the Senior Bowl. He did not participate in the East-West Shrine game. He was invited to the Senior Bowl and then pulled out when he played in the national championship game, believing that it was just going to be too much. So maybe that has something to do with it, that if you're not there in the spotlight, gaining the attention and keeping yourself front of mind, maybe you lose a little bit of oomph as you go along. But I don't know, he just, for a period of time, wasn't getting the love that some of these other sort of second-tier quarterbacks were getting. But I think he's getting it now. I think he's getting it now, even though he did not have a dazzling throwing day at the Senior Bowl. I mean, at the Combine. I do think that, that he still has helped his stock, and I think he could surprise some people with where he goes in this draft.
So another one of your Hey Mary Kays, what free agent quarterbacks, or let's say veteran quarterbacks, do you think the Browns pursue? So that would include possible trades.
Well, I think if you are going to end up with a rookie quarterback who you believe can start for you this season, and the two that you would think that would be able to do that would be Cam or Shedeur. So if you're going to get one of those guys at number 2, and you're pretty confident that you're going to do that, then I don't think you want to go out and spend a bunch of money on a starting veteran quarterback. I don't think that would make sense to do that because he's not going to be happy. No one's going to be happy in that scenario. And your salary cap isn't going to be happy either. So I don't know that you're going to go out there and break the bank on a starting quarterback. I think you're going to look for a more moderately priced quarterback. And I'm going to say this with a caveat. If a quarterback, a really good veteran quarterback becomes available that wasn't necessarily available before, then you'll be ready to pivot. And next week, or even this week, as they're talking to teams, they will be looking at every single possibility that exists. And if something comes up that perhaps was unforeseen, like the Matt Stafford situation, if they could have landed someone like that, maybe you would think of that. So if someone becomes available that they think can step in and win for them right away as a veteran, then perhaps, you would think about going ahead and doing that. But you don't necessarily want to bring in someone of that caliber if you think you're going to be starting a Shedeur or a Cam early on in the season.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about running back, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, assuming that the Browns take a quarterback with their second pick, number 2 overall, what positions do you think they look at in the second and third rounds then? In other words, what are the next most important areas to get talent in the draft?
Well, we must always remember that they do not draft for need. Now, when you have 11 picks overall, you're probably going to end up filling a lot of your needs, but they're not going to go into it and number 33 comes up, and they're going to look at their roster and they're going to say, geez, we need a running back. We have to take one here. That's not how this is going to work. They will be very true to their board. So if a left tackle comes up and that's their highest rated player at number 33, that's the position that they'll go with. But as we go through the draft, and we are talking about the 11 picks that they are going to have once they get the compensatory picks, I do think that it's a very deep defensive line, especially defensive tackle draft. So that's a place to look. And running back, it is a deep running back class. So I would be looking at a running back maybe even as high as number 33, especially if it's sort of an all-purpose weapon. If you can find a younger version of a Deebo Samuel or someone like that that can come in and be a tremendous game changer for you. We all saw what Saquon Barkley was able to do for the Eagles this year. So if you can find not necessarily a generational player at that spot, but someone who can be a transformational player there, then I would consider doing something like that. I'm all about another premier receiver. I don't know if the Browns agree with me. I think they think so highly of Cedric Tillman that they're willing to have Jerry Jeudy and Ced be their two main guys and then fill in some other pieces and parts. But I would be continuing to add to the receiver pile for sure. And then defensive end. I'm going defensive end. I think it's so important to get another double-digit sacker in there that can complement Myles Garrett and really continue to push the envelope there.
You wrote an article about Greg Newsome, wants to re-sign to help the team, but he feels he needs to be on the field a little more. Take us through that article just on Newsome.
Yeah, I talked to him on Radio Row at the Super Bowl, and he offered that up, that he wants to be on the field more. When I asked him about, do you want to be here and sign that long-term contract? And he said, yes, I do. But we have to figure this out. I want to be on the field more. He doesn't want to be playing 60-some% of the snaps, 70% of the snaps. He wants to be playing full time, whether that's outside or inside. When they only have two cornerbacks on the field, he wants to be one of them. So that is something that they are going to have to work through, and he's being vocal about it. And I was almost a little surprised that he was willing to open up and share that and talk about that because, that's a pretty big ask. And if they don't have that in mind for him, then they are going to have to work through that. So we'll have to see how that goes. But he was hoping that the Browns would talk to his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, about that issue and see if they can't come to a meeting of the minds.
So how active do you think Andrew Berry is in free agency? They can start talking, I think it's Monday, they can actually start talking. The tampering, it used to be called, now it's just negotiating. And also the trade market. Do you foresee that potentially happening again?
Andrew Berry is very, very aggressive when it comes to talent acquisition. And I think he will be again. He always is. Even if they head into it thinking that they're going to lay low and be somewhat judicious about things, I think it gets exciting. And you head into the period and you see some things. It's like going to the grocery store when you're hungry. And I think that they will see some things that they're going to want to grab, and they will be willing to try to make some trades. They will be willing to maybe throw some money at a couple of guys. I don't think it'll be the way that it has been in some of the previous years where they were really trying to really get over the top into the Super Bowl necessarily right away. But I do think that they will add some key pieces to this team and prove to everyone, including probably Myles Garrett, that they do mean business about winning in 2025.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer. Cleveland.com, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Mary Kay.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Great Browns coverage in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report. Straight ahead, stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
the new Monopoly Bonus Spectacular family of scratch-offs from the Ohio Lottery, you can uncover a spectacular amount of winnings. With 5 games from $1 to 20, multipliers from 5 times to 100 times, over $113 million in total cash prizes, and chance bonuses. What you find under a greenhouse could change everything.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. This is a mock draft by Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, and he did a full one for the Browns. So he has the Browns going Cam Ward at 2, Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle from Michigan at 33, 67, tight end, Mason Taylor, Jalen Royals, wide receiver at 94, Demetrius Knight, linebacker from South Carolina at 103. We'll get to the back half of this first, but let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, I would imagine if Cam Ward is there, they run that. It won't take the full time to, unless they're listening to trade offers. Cam Ward, I think, is becoming the guy that they would like.
Yeah, you can definitely feel the momentum going in that direction. Just the rumors coming out of the combine versus Cam Ward being a distant 1 from Shedeur, and Shedeur being closer to 3 than he is 1. It feels like everything's angling in that direction. But with that being said, they don't have the first pick in the draft. So if other people feel that same way, Tennessee's phone's going to be ringing. So it's going to be interesting.
What do you like about Grant, the D tackle from Michigan that you had at 33?
Brute squad. I mean, just a wall up front, can't run on him. And if you look at, in my opinion, he's a borderline top 10 player in this draft. So if he slides out of the first round, that's an easy call. But the Browns defense need to solidify the middle. And that's from the tackles to the backers, and you've already got your gap shooter, your 3 tech, and Michael Hall. So to go get a space eater, someone that's going to clog up gaps, collapse pockets, make life difficult on opposing quarterbacks and running backs, think you owe to yourself to do that. And Grant would be a home run at 33.
You got Taylor and Royal, so tight end and then a wide receiver. What do you like about those two?
You need weapons, and I've been mocking tight ends. There's a great tight end class. If you look outside the top 2, the people that have consensus first-round picks, and Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, I think Mason Taylor's the next best sure thing. 6'4", 250. Obviously, he's the son of a Hall of Famer, but just knock that aside, and you look at his skill set. He's got a tremendous catch radius, phenomenal hands catcher. He understands spatial awareness, gets soft spots and zones. He's going to be a quarterback's best friend, like a security blanket. And he has an untapped potential in yak. He really wasn't asked to do a ton of this at LSU, but he's someone who could attack the seams and be a real threat once you get in the red zone.
All right, so the second half of this draft, you got an offensive lineman. You made a trade. You had the Browns sending 165, 202, 217 to the Vikings for 140. Then getting a smaller schooled offensive lineman, Grant from William and Mary. You got an edge rusher. You got Devin Neal and Trevor Etienne as 2 running backs. So let's focus on them because I want to talk a little bit more about running backs. What do you like about them? And I like the idea of 2 from this class.
Yeah, I'm team take 2 in this draft. If you look at Devin Neal, though, it's a phenomenal vision. He actually weaponized pace, not just acceleration, but deceleration. And he understands cutbacks, and he doesn't have crazy top end speed. He's going to rip plenty of 20-yard runs in the league. He's 220 pounds. He's more of your hammer, a great wide zone type of back. But then you look at Etienne, smaller, closer to 200 pounds, and he's going to be a phenomenal pass catching back in this league. But for whatever reason, he keeps falling down boards. He's only 20 years old. He's moved schools a couple of times, and this is such a deep class that he's falling this far. In normal years, that's probably a 5th-round pick. So I'm trying to pair backs in all these mocks, and I'm trying to get different styles. I want a hammer, and I want a speed element. and that's the two I chose for this particular thought exercise.
All right, we'll get to back to running backs in a minute. Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, ESPN Cleveland. This is kind of his biggest concerns at number 2.
The Browns don't trade Myles Garrett.
Oh.
He holds out, and we draft Abdul Carter. That would be my nightmare scenario. What is yours?
I hesitate to use nightmare because it sounds like I don't like this guy, but I think taking Shedeur at number 2 is worse than that.
Really?
I just don't like his arm strength.
Okay.
I've been watching more and more, and I just think
So, Tone, you're saying
Baker had a better arm than him. And I think
Tony, isn't it fair to say also the celebrity quarterback thing rubs you the wrong way?
It does. Now, Bernie kind of relieves some of my angst about that, but yeah, it is an issue with me. I don't want a circus again. I think Cam Ward is just down to business, no nonsense football.
It's kind of interesting. Again, the arm strength concerns me. The celebrity quarterback, if you win, do whatever, you know what I mean? Just show up on Sunday and win, and everything else will take care of itself.
Conversely, though, if he loses, that noise is a lot louder because of who his father is.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know
Yes,
you
it
shouldn't have to
is.
consider it, but you kind of have to.
That's absolutely fair, without question. All right, so the question becomes, Cam Ward's not on the board at number 2. What do you do?
I'm Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, or trade out. That's just my mentality right now. And you know, one of those two are going to be available since you're picking it too. So it depends on how in love you are with the player. And if their evaluation on Cam is that of a franchise quarterback and he slips to 2, this isn't a question. But if it's a borderline for them, whether he could be the franchise answer and you get phone calls and you get a king's ransom, you have to consider trading out. So it's all based on your evaluation. I look at Cam as clearly he's a ceiling swing. And if I'm picking a quarterback this high in the draft, I am swinging for the fences. And in my opinion, he's the only quarterback that kind of gives you that upside.
Yeah. So if you trade out and Shedeur is lurking at, I don't know, 7 or 9, are you willing to take him there if you trade out at 2?
Personally, I would.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Personally, I think he's a second-round talent. And I don't want to reach for that position if I have surefire starters in place that I could pick up there, a Tet McMillan, an Armand Membu, someone like that. If I can solidify my left tackle at 7 or 8 with a Josh Simmons, I'd feel more comfortable doing that than swinging on Shedeur.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you. Just whomever you get, if it's a top 10 pick, it's got to be a guy that is a Pro Bowl caliber player for 8 years, for lack of a better thing. All right. Is there a running back or a wide receiver? I think this offense needs some playmakers. Assuming you get Cam Ward at 2, is there a running back or wide receiver who, if he's there at 33, you run the card up and go get him?
Well, there's 12 running backs that I absolutely love in this draft, but it's truly a deep class. We kept talking about it, and then they went to the combine, and this group averaged a 4.48 in the 40. I mean, this is an exceptional group, but because there's so many, I don't see one in particular that you have to take at 33. Receiver is not as deep. So I know beginning of this draft cycle, Tet McMillan was constantly in the top 5 of these mock drafts. You're watching him slip out right in front of you, and he didn't test. Right now, he's close to 20. If he were to slip out of that first round, that's a no-brainer. Matthew Golden from Texas. If he somehow makes it out of that first round, he's there at 33, I would absolutely spend that pick on him.
The one that I've seen that slips into the second round is Luther Burden from Missouri. Would you throw him into that mix, or is that not quite that level for you?
I think he's a tremendous talent, but I think it's more of a hat-on-a-hat circumstance because I think he does what Jerry Jeudy does. I'm all about getting differentiating skill sets and body types, especially at wide receiver. And you don't get worse from getting Luther Burden on your team, but I want to add an outside presence. I want to add a field stretcher on the outside, a big body guy that just gives you a couple different looks that you currently don't have on the roster. We might change our mind in a year from now if Tillman shows up and he is the legit article, but it's still an incomplete evaluation for me, so I can't bank on him being that guy. So I go out there and try to get an outside X receiver if possible.
All right, before I let you go, how active do you think Andrew Berry and the Browns are free agency and trade market the early part of next week when they can start doing those things?
The most. I think that they got to go out there, and it's all avenues. And I expect more out of trades than I do free agency with big swings. But even free agency, we've seen in years past, that first wave of guys that are getting paid top dollar, probably not going to be in on those guys. It's that second and third wave. And they have to. You look at this roster. You need another added quarterback, a veteran quarterback. But we've talked about that ad nauseum. You need a swing tackle and you need a safety. And I think you're going to have to get those in free agency. You can add to that in the draft, but you can't go into the draft with holes at those two positions. So I expect a swing tackle. I would kick the tires on Mekhi Becton. See if Philly's not going to retain him. He's rejuvenated his career. I like him at tackle. They used him at guard because their offensive line was so complete. I would look at him. From looking at safeties, you can look at Justin Simmons in Atlanta, Andre Cisco in Jacksonville. There's options, but you need to fill those holes before the draft.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report, also the LOIs on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. We're going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Sam Amico, hoopswire.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us. Full Court Action is a half hour devoted exclusively to men's and women's basketball from across the Mid-American Conference. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Bacon. Join me at 6:30 Tuesday nights, and we'll meet the coaches and players from the Mid-American Conference who are making an impact in basketball. Full Court Action will spotlight the top plays and performances from all across the Mid-American Conference with some historical action as well. Catch Full Court Action Tuesday nights at 6:30 on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. A couple of comebacks, big comebacks in their last two wins against the Celtics and the Trailblazers. Evan Mobley will be out tonight, resting as they get ready to face the Chicago Bulls against the Blazers. Donovan Mitchell rested. Now they're resting Evan Mobley. Let's welcome in Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, co-host of Full Court Cleveland. So, Sam, what do you think of the way Kenny Atkinson is kind of managing minutes, resting guys as you get ready for the playoffs?
Yeah, I really like what they're doing in terms of resting guys one at a time. Kind of platooning the rest, I mean, having Evan Mobley sit out a game after Donovan Mitchell sat out a game. Really, it's all about, while maintaining that number one seed, not only in the Eastern Conference, hopefully for their sake, throughout the entire NBA with Oklahoma City kind of on their heels for the number one overall seed. But it's really just about letting guys get a little bit of a break while still trying to win games and not losing too much cohesion and flow for when the postseason gets here. So I'd imagine maybe if they do maintain this number one seed, we'll see a couple games where the starting five altogether sits out toward the end of the season. But for now, we're going to see more of this kind of rotating rest days for guys, I think.
So, they, again, mentioned the Bulls. Third time they'll face them this year. Cavs are 9-1 against Central Division opponents. You'd find if you go against the Atlantic Division or when you're 50-10, those kind of numbers. But there hasn't been the letdown against teams they should beat. They put them away pretty quickly, usually.
Yeah, most of the time they've done that. We saw against Portland the other night without Mitchell. It was kind of the opposite of that. But they've just been, obviously at 50-10, as you just said, they're definitely winning the games they should win. The record against teams that are either play-in teams or probably not headed to the playoffs is impeccable. They're not getting upset, surprised, which, you look at last season, a lot of these games they would have lost. That probably includes the Boston game where they were down 25-3, but probably also that Portland game at home. That probably is a game they lost last season. So I think there's a different mindset this year in going out and handling business against these teams that, are just kind of right in the middle, like Chicago, or Brooklyn. And you don't want to flip a switch, but they always seem to get it together throughout the course of games right at the moment that they need to do it.
One of the key additions at the trade deadline, DeAndre Hunter, and take a look at what he has done so far for the Cavs. 16 points, 4.1 rebounds, 50.2 field goal percentage, almost 60% from three-point range. What have you thought about the way he's fit in? I mean, it's been so quick. He looks like he's been here all year.
Yeah, I mean, look, the mission at the trade deadline was, let's see if we can go out and get a top-level 3-and-D guy. If we can't go out and get that guy, well, then we're, at that point they were, 40-10 when they made that trade, and just kind of felt like we're only going to make a deal if we can get a top-level guy. Well, turns out they ended up getting a guy who really was with Atlanta a candidate for sixth man of the year, maybe the front runner for sixth man of the year. And he's really been the ultimate 3-and-D guy in the NBA this season. We've seen not only the difference he makes defensively and the plays he can make defensively, but, scoring 32 against the Blazers, as you mentioned in that stat, 60% from the field on three-pointers. So just a lot of everything they needed, when it comes to what DeAndre Hunter has brought them, and haven't lost a game since he's been in uniform. So, it's not like they had to take a step back to adjust. As you said, Dave, it looks like he's been here all season. He's just fit in seamlessly and really been the difference, I think, not just in the Portland game, but also a huge difference maker in that win at Boston.
Ty Jerome is a guy that I think should get some call for sixth man of the year. So he's averaged now. He's scored 20 or more 10 games. 8 of those 10, he's come off the bench. Sam, I know they're creeping into the luxury tax, and you got to find a way. They got to find a way to bring this guy back. This guy has been exactly what you need with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah, you look back at what Ricky Rubio did a couple of seasons ago before he got injured in Cleveland. I thought Ty Jerome could potentially do that. He's done a lot more, which I don't think anybody saw coming, maybe not even Ty Jerome. But, look, a big reason for their success has been the play of their bench. And he's been a leader in that all season. Even the games he's not scoring, the other night he had 6 steals. He's just doing all the intangibles. And when you factor in the truth that he's hitting threes and he's got that little slow Euro step to the basket that seems to result in 2 points every time, either a regular bank shot or fouls, it's just made a huge difference. And you're right, Dave. Cavs have 2 guys who are, should be in the running for sixth man of the year, and they just happen to be best friends in DeAndre Hunter and Ty Jerome. So what Ty Jerome has brought more than anything is just kind of that lift when all else seems down. You look at that game against Boston, they were down 25-3. He comes in and plays like they're winning and starts hitting shots and moving the ball and defending and just bringing energy that the team desperately needed. So, yeah, quite a find. Obviously, he was on the team last year, but played in a game and a half and then missed the rest of the year. Just quite a find for the Cavaliers and quite an addition, without having to make a trade or anything. All they did was sign him. So, yeah, you're right. At the end of the year, there's a lot of pathways for the Cavs to keep Ty Jerome, but unless somebody really, really throws huge money at him, which is something that they're going to have to think about. But for now, just enjoy the guy and see how far he can help carry you.
So it's kind of interesting. We all see the Cavs offense. This puts it in perspective, though. If the season ended today, Cavs would have the second highest offensive rating all time behind last year's Boston Celtics. So Cavs are 122.9. Celtics last year 123.8. 0.2. So that close. That is you can see it. Those numbers put what you're seeing into perspective.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to what we've seen most of this season is they're fairly unstoppable. You know, it's when they lose games, it's because they seem to be out of sorts a little bit defensively. Offensively, there's really almost never any issue, even when they're not making shots. You know, they didn't make shots against Portland the other night. They still found a way in that second half to be way more efficient and not relying so much on, you know, perimeter scoring, which obviously is where their strength is. But they're also getting a lot of points in the paint and at the basket. You don't have great offensive efficiency without scoring from everywhere, whether it's threes, at the basket, mid-range. And I think this just speaks to, you know, their level of cohesion and mostly, obviously, their depth. You know, I mean, you look at their bench scoring has been through the roof when compared to other teams. There's some of these games, they're outscoring the opposing bench by 40-9 or something. So really their depth and their ball movement and unselfishness and all the things that you talk about for a good basketball team, they're putting on display.
All right, before I let you go, regular season, you want them to have the number 1 seed overall, which they currently have a half game or a game lead on Oklahoma City. But at this point, is it more about making sure you hit the playoffs where you want to be, or, you know, what's the balancing act for Kenny Atkinson with that and being ready for the playoffs and the final 20 games of the regular season, 22, I believe it is?
Yeah, at this point, you know, I think that they have the number 1 seed pretty much locked up. They'd really have to go on an unforeseen meltdown, and even that, you know, could Boston catch them even if that were to happen? It's pretty much locked up, the number 1 seed. So with that in mind, right now you want to kind of make sure that you're staying true to your principles while getting people rest and getting them ramped up for the playoffs. And Kenny Atkinson has said, you know, just said the other night, in the locker room, we're not talking at all about our record. It's everything that has resulted in that record that we're talking about, and which is, you know, the ball movement, shoring up the defense, and the mindset now is, you know, stay good and consistent and, you know, stick to your principles and what's working, but the playoffs are in your mind. You know, you want to make sure that's where you're healthiest and at your best. And now it's just kind of, you know, let's finish the season strong, but, you know, the priority is not finishing with the number 1 record in the NBA or going and getting 65 wins or whatever. It's let's finish strong and play well and make sure that we're ready for when it means the most. Kenny Atkinson said it in training camp. You know, this team over the last 2 years has been better before the All-Star break. Can't have that. Now we want to be at our absolute best after the All-Star break. And so far, that's been the case, right? 10 straight wins going into the night and 8-0 with DeAndre Hunter. I think they're in pretty good shape.
Sam Amico, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Sam.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.
Sam Amico, make sure you check him out, hoopswire.com. He is also the host of Full Court Cleveland. Make sure you check him out. Always really good Cavs stuff and covering the entire NBA as well. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.